Welcome back to VDVR Arcade. In today's video, Fred, Eddie the Eagle, and I are going to be talking about these two steering wheels. Now, they both have their issues that I'm sure a lot of people know, but I want to get down to the nitty-gritty and find out what's the good, the bad, and the ugly between the two. Is this one so superior that it's worth every penny you pay for it, or is it not worth it over this one because of its shortcomings? If that's something that you're interested to find out on a little bit more technical and deeper level, then this video will be for you. And at the end, we'll see who comes out on top, and hopefully it gives you the information you need to decide if this wheel is ever going to be a wheel you want to purchase, or at what price it would be worth it for you to purchase. So if that's something you're interested, stick around. Let's get this hold down, low down, showdown on the road. Let's talk about the looks. We'll start with the sport wheel first. Now the sport wheel, the first thing you probably notice is going to be the red highlights on it. The second thing you probably notice is the carbon fiber plate. Doesn't matter if it's real or fake, it's just what you're going to notice. And then from there you probably look at the buttons and go, yeah, okay, there's this little thing down here, but you're not really, the aesthetics at that point are kind of starting to fade, because now you're noticing rubber and plastic ultimately, and you're like, okay. And while this one, in my opinion, isn't necessarily hideous and ugly, I don't mind it. You know, it doesn't scream quality by its look by any means once you get close enough to see it up close. That is what is the difference between this one, for instance. You know, the first thing you might notice on this one is going to be the chrome at a distance, but as you get closer and closer, the things that are going to stand out are going to first and foremost probably going to be the 4 dials with the colored rings on each, because that is something that is really noticeable for most people when you see it. Now, the closer you get and the more you touch it or look at it, you're going to notice that the wheel rim is covered in a different material. It's not plastic. You're going to notice that the actual plate here that everything attaches to is not plastic and is in a brushed aluminum. So you're going to start to notice that the quality difference, as well as the looks that goes with it, raises it to another level. And most people ultimately are going to go with the thing that they feel is the higher quality, even though they might ultimately slightly like the look of this one more over this one per se, because this one just screams a lot nicer quality. The aesthetics department and the looks department, it's going to win out more times than not. So with that, I would have to say that I have to give the looks and aesthetics department a slight edge to the GT wheel. Alright, so let's talk about the sizes. I'm pretty sure everybody's aware that the GT wheel is a little bit smaller rim than some of the other wheels out there, and it is definitely smaller than the sport wheel. The sport wheel that comes with your T598 is 11.5 inches. The GT wheel is only 11 inches. Now my upgrade, my T150 was 10.75, so it's still a little bit bigger than that, but it's basically that again. So I'm not as happy with that, that it's smaller. I like the larger wheel myself, because I've been with such a small wheel for so long that I was happy to go to the larger wheel. But that's not the only difference. The actual thickness of the diameter of the rim itself is different. So it's thinner on the GT wheel here, it's thicker on the sport wheel here. But when you rotate them like this, the GT wheel is fatter this way and it is skinnier on the sport wheel. The other major differences that I noticed right out the gate is where your hand placement's going to be. For right here, you've got these bump outs right here. And when you put your hands here, you can notice them, you feel them, and they're there. On the GT wheel, you got 2 little tiny ones, but they're not very noticeable. Almost like they're not there. You can tell, but they're very, very small. Now, there's caveats there I'll explain in a second, because it also plays a role in the next hand placement, and that is the Formula 1 placement, right? If you can't buy a wheel because you don't have the money, and you shelled out all your money for this, not everybody can get a wheel, so you might be using this for Formula 1 too. So this is important for those people. And you got bump outs here. Makes it feel good. It fills your hands out a little bit because you don't want your hands to totally cut back into themselves, even though you can't ultimately, but that feels pretty good. You know, it feels like your hands are grabbing something instead of there being voids, right? So I like that. It's one of the things I liked about it when I got it in the upgrade video. This one doesn't have that at all. But when you grab it and you hold it, it feels pretty good too. It fills out your hands pretty good too. And the reason for that is the caveat that I mentioned earlier, is that because this rim is thicker than this rim this way, that still fills out your hands good. And it still feels good when you're holding your hands here. And it's probably why this doesn't need to be as big, because you've got more diameter this way. And ultimately, these are roughly the same thickness. If you measure from here to here versus just the thickness of the rim here, that is the same. So at the end of the day, I don't have any real issues with either one when it comes to the hand placement per se. That's kind of a wash on me. They both feel like a different car, which is what buying different wheels is about, to get a different feel for a different car, to change the immersion. And since I'm an immersion channel and I play in VR, that's a good, big deal. So I like that, you know. The next thing ultimately, and the last thing, is just the weight. And the weight is considerably different. This is about 40% heavier. This weighs almost 3 pounds, like 2.9 pounds or something. And this one weighs like 1.8 pounds. That's a big difference. Now, it's expected based on the materials they're made of. This one's aluminum. This one's got, you know, a lot more going on with it. So it's going to be heavier, and that's nice. Generally, that means more robust, more quality, nicer. Boom. If you're looking at it that way, and you look at this one's plastic, rubber, it's cheap, it's light, it's flimsy, it just doesn't feel good. That's what everybody rips on it about. I don't think it's as cheap as people say on it, but that's the difference. So if you're looking at it from that angle, then sure, the GT wheel is much, much nicer. But when you look at it from a weight issue, then this wheel's better because it's lighter. You know, on my rig, I like less weight, so there's less wear and tear on my motors. You know, ultimately, I shaved a pound off switching from my TLCMs to the Raceline 3 load cells, and now I'm, with this wheel, putting that pound right back on. I don't care really, but you understand? So it depends on what's important to you. So I would again give this a draw. So at the end of the day, the only thing that really, in my opinion, that isn't a draw on the sizes and stuff to how it plays or feels is the actual size. And I just prefer the little bit larger size than I do this one. And because of that, I have to give the slight edge in this round to the sport wheel.
Yeah.
So this section is just mainly about VR design and how does the wheel work if you're blind in VR and you want to be able to use the features and options that they have with each wheel set, and which one is more user VR friendly. If you're a screen racer, this section probably ain't for you, and you can skip through the next section. But this is mainly for the VR users out there. And if you're on PlayStation with Gran Turismo, I know there's a lot of VR users out there racing. So with that being said, let me start with the sport wheel. In the sport wheel, the user friendliness for VR pretty much starts and ends with the podium buttons here. That's it. Because these are raised at different heights, that is nice to help you keep an idea of what buttons you're pressing. Outside of that, the rest of it, not the greatest. Now you can reach your hands without really, but they're still kind of far to reach these here to make some adjustments if you want, but it's buttons and it's still not as user friendly having to go through menus with these buttons as you would like it to be in VR. The other thing is this button here. Sometimes you have to reset your view and you have to hold that down to reset. When I go into a pit, sometimes I get jostled, and when I'm leaving the pit, it's raised me up, so I have to hit that to lower back down to feel right. Otherwise, it feels like I'm almost in the roof. And this is very, very difficult to reach. Look at how far you have to reach your hands, you know. Super difficult where, you know, you should be able to just not ever have to take your hand off. That's the nice thing about this wheel. When you hold this wheel, here's the button right there. I don't ever have to take my hand. It's nice and big. It's not small. I got big fat fingers, so I'm not gonna get this tiny little button over here. You know, the other thing that's nice is these buttons, these encoders that you can use. Now, I played with one a little bit, and while I was racing, and only did a little bit because it was like, oh my god, I don't want to crash and screw up.
Change that. That's cool, man. That's cool. You can change that over there. Like, see this? Look at this. And you can zoom in on that map. Check your times. Whoa, but fucking around does make it sloppy. You gotta be more precise picking your spots, I guess.
But if you're looking at it blind and you're holding your steering wheel like this, and then, you know, you can take your hand off, it's really not that bad because they're so pronounced and they're front facing. So that makes it really, really nice and easy in my opinion. And so I just have to say that the VR aspect or usability or friendliness of this is so much nicer than this one. Thinking about the dials on a different wheel, like the hypercar, might not be the same because the way they're different laid out. But when it comes to this one being front facing, it just, everything seemed fine. So on this round, I'm going to have to give the win to the GT wheel. So there's one big glaring difference between these two that I think most people are going to realize really fast as soon as they squeeze the shifter paddles. And that is that this one has magnetic shifter paddles and this one doesn't. Now you would think that the $300 wheel that you're buying as an add-on would have magnetic shifter paddles in 2026, and that the cheap packing would be the one with the cheap spring-loaded button pushing last gen tech in it. But that is not the case. And the reason for that, for anybody who doesn't know, is because ultimately this is a last gen designed wheel. All Thrustmaster did when they claimed they brought it to the next gen and updated it is updated the wheel hub interface. That's it. They didn't do anything else. And it probably stems from a few different things. Licensing agreements and the fact that this gives them a competitor against Fanatec's GT wheel now. If they change stuff and turn this into a magnetic, they are altering the product and it probably no longer falls under the original licensing agreement and they would have to negotiate a new one, which would be a whole bunch of more crap, and they don't want to do that. So I'm sure that's probably played a role. So that's why you've got this, and that's why these haven't changed, because nothing has changed. As far as I'm concerned, this is the exact same wheel with just this. Doesn't mean it's a bad wheel. It's a great wheel in many respects, but you're dealing with last gen technology here, where with this one, you're dealing with new gen technology. Now the travel distance on these is quite a bit different. And it's like going backwards, in my opinion, going from this wheel to this wheel. Now it's not as bad as my T150. The T150, I think, on a paddle distance travel was about 13 millimeters. And this one, I think, is around 9. And on this one, it's like 5. And that's quite a bit difference. There's a reason why it feels a lot snappier, because the pulling is shorter too. You can't pull it that far, because as soon as you pull it too far away from the magnet, then you lose the strength, and then that snappy and then that force that you're feeling that gives you that magnetic feel starts to dissipate and gets weak, and it doesn't feel as good. So that is another component that people, I think, overlook when they're dealing with making mods, for instance. And that's one of the other reasons why I was willing to overlook, per se, the fact that this wasn't a click. The price, for one, I got it for $175, which I think is a good deal. And the fact that I can make mods. Now, I looked at everybody's out there, and I wasn't impressed with anybody, because they all have that same fundamental flaw. So I decided to design my own, and I have a working, finished product that is legit, and it works, and it makes this feel pretty much the same as this one. The only difference being that you hear the click there. For this one, it doesn't have the click because it doesn't have a mechanical button. But here is my kit, and I'm going to be releasing a video on these, how to install them, and where you can get them if you want to get this to be able to have magnetic paddle shifters. And I will explain to you why this kit is superior to every other one out there. Everybody else is designed This kit is superior to it, and there's one main reason why. At least all the ones I saw. I spent a couple hours looking, and I didn't see anything. All of them were just variations of the same kind of thing, and they do the same thing, and they totally overlook, I think, an important fact of magnetic designed shifter paddles. So with with this, it evens the playing field, right? But without this out of the box, I have to give the win on the paddle shifters to the sport wheel on this one. So I just want to touch briefly on the quality, and you know, it's pretty obvious. I don't think I need to say much. This is mainly all plastic. The buttons are just your standard feeling buttons. You know, everything is just, you know, rubber, plastic. It's lightweight. There's not anything real snazzy to it. The most high budget or quality thing about this whole steering wheel is the magnetic shifters itself. Because these feel nice. These feel really good. These feel updated. So I would say overall, that is the nicest feature on this wheel if you're talking about it in a quality sense. Over here, on the other hand, you've got a lot of different things from a quality perspective. Now, the one thing that this shines in the quality department, this lacks in the quality department. And again, last section we just talked about was the shifter paddles being old school. Now, the paddle itself is aluminum versus steel, so that technically is a nicer thing, but steel is actually the better play, because if you're going to make a mod like we kind of briefly touched on last section, then aluminum ain't going to do you any good. A lot of the mods that people see won't work with this because it's aluminum. But let's get to the actual other stuff. This is all leather. This is a stitched in here, which is way nicer than plastic and rubber. These buttons are like a mechanical button over whatever membrane button these are. And this is so, or the tactileness of it, however they did them, is way nicer feeling. These buttons even feel nicer. These encoders are metal, and they have a nice tactile feel when you're rotating them. And when you push them in, the button feels nice. And just the overall framing is aluminum. It's brushed. So the weight is heavier and it feels stronger and more robust in that regard. And just overall, I'd say the other thing that you could say maybe kind of is goofy is the plastic here, but it's an aesthetics thing, you know, kind of why they did that. But people might prefer this to be all leather, and I guess I wouldn't mind that either, but this doesn't bother me so much. But outside of that, there's so many improvements on this quality-wise that it just hands down dominates this on the quality. Okay, everybody, so let's discuss gameplay, because gameplay is kind of one of those fickle things where if you're just talking about how the steering wheel feels, then the gameplay, it's subjective and it's kind of like a draw, because this is going to feel slightly different than this one. And that doesn't mean it's good or bad, because that's like getting into two different cars and racing around the same track. They're going to feel different, and that doesn't mean you're not having just as much fun, you know, but it's just how it is. And I think that's the reason why people buy multiple steering wheels, for that aspect, to change the immersion. I've said multiple times along this video. So I don't want to talk about that being what we judge, because it would be a draw in that point. What I want to judge is the buttons and the stuff that allows you to manipulate settings and change stuff on the fly in live conditions during the race, and how that affects your performance gameplay. And I'd have to say, now this one has everything you need for the most part, but when you start getting into wanting to change your fuel and your brake balance and stuff like that, you're limited to working within this. And it can be much slower with the button system, and having to press one button 3 times to get to the menu you need before you can do something else, versus when you move over to a wheel like this that has 4 individual encoders. So I don't have to press this one button 3 times, because this one I can access, this one I can access, This one I can access, and I think you can have 4 on each one, so you can have up to 16 on each one. So similar or same things you set up to each one, so you're not going, oh, did I go onto the gas this time and I want to be on the brake balance because I hit the button. Plus, it's just much easier with the wheel like this in a hectic situation, even if you're pit stopped, because you don't have much time in racing. A second is forever. You know what I mean? So you don't want to spend a bunch of time fumbling and fidgeting because you don't have it. And especially if you're trying to make changes on the track.
You know, open my turn on a straightaway, for instance, being able to adjust my shit on the fly, change out my map here real quick. That's pretty awesome. You changing that map out like that. You know, now this race, it only lets you change the one thing. Oh, look at that. When you go to the map, you can zoom in like that. That is cool, man. Wow, I didn't do that. Damn, that's cool. Wow, see that? Yeah, you can zoom.
But I will get used to it, and I will start using it more because I see the advantages, and I stand corrected. When I did my upgrade video here, I was like, I don't think it could be that much, but you still be competitive with this. And while I think if all you're doing is racing with the wheel and not messing with any settings during the whole race in the same car, I think you can be competitive. But if you get somebody who has a wheel like this versus a wheel like this, you can change settings on both, but the speed and ease of use is with which this type of a wheel setup allows you to change those settings is a huge advantage. Huge advantage. And it really comes down to who can take advantage of the most advantages. And if you saw my load cell comparison video here, I talk about advantages of the different load cell bit rates. You know, and I know the argument there, but that's just another thing that you want. The more advantages you can have, the better chance you have to win that race. And sometimes winning a race is like, you know, neck and neck across that finish line. I've won races in my life by hundredths of a second before. It's exhilarating, but you know, that's the name of the game. Doesn't matter how much you win by as long as you win. You know, at least that's the way I look at it. So, hands down, this is the much better option when it comes to gameplay and is going to offer you a superior gameplay experience overall when you take everything into the account. So I have to give the win to the GT wheel on this one. Dun, dun, dun. Well, it looks like Sheriff GT was victorious in the duel of the century against Sports Wheeler. I don't know what to say, but all Sports Wheeler had was flashy tricks and a quick draw, but the experience, the strength, the adaptability of Sheriff GT made sure that those advantages that Sports Wheeler had would not lead him to victory in the end. So, I'm sorry to say, Sports Wheeler, but you must leave town and find another place because there's not enough room in Race City for the both of us. And with that, I want to thank Sheriff GT for the experience, for the thrills, for the ease of use, for the VR friendliness, the fact that he is there to make sure everybody's racing experience is the best it can be. Everybody give a large round of applause to Sheriff GT, the savior of Race City. All in all, being serious, how do you guys like my little videos, my little animation fight scene between the two? It's kind of cheesy and generic, you know, because here's the deal. I don't make any money doing this. This is all passion, all fun, and I'm not going to spend the amount of time and effort it would take to make stuff look super, super good. But it's cool enough. It's cheese in a way, but it's cool enough. You know, a little storyline. Figure we'd do a little Western duo with these two, and thought I'd have a little bit of fun with it, because I've never done anything like that, you know. And I've always loved making videos since I went to college for graphic design way back in the early 2000s when I was playing with After Effects. I just never really was able to do it because of just what my career path was. But, you know, so that's why I kind of like making videos too. And even though I don't get anything for it, but yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I don't really know what else to say. I think at the end of the day, they both have their bonuses and their benefits. And if you're just racing for the actual feel, they do feel different. So you could get the feel of driving in a different car. But when it comes to overall quality and overall ease of use and accessibility to settings on the fly and just ease of use of changing all that, hands down, the GT wheel still hands down is nice and better than this. Again, the only thing that ultimately is nicer out of the box on this one is the magnetic paddle shifters. But again, I remedied that with this kit that I'll be making a video on and make available for people so that you can buy it, and I will explain in that video again. While this hands down is better than anything else that is out on the market, because they all fundamentally overlook something. So with that, I think that having this combination makes this pretty good ultimately. And you know, luckily this isn't going to cost an arm and a leg for everybody out there. So if you're interested in looking at this, Woot still has their sale going on. It's $199 right now, affiliated with Amazon. They reflipped their 11-day or till it's sold out window, so apparently it's not pressing, and probably because a lot of people are dissatisfied with this, and it's ultimately just the old wheel with the new hub on it. So it's nothing real snazzy. But if you're a GT user and you don't have it and you're still rocking this, this might be a good deal for you, and this really is useful. When I played around with it a little bit in GT, I can see how it could really, really be advantageous. So I would give it a potential look. And since I have these available, not trying to talk myself up, but I think you'll be happy with how these make the paddle shifters feel, and not very much. So look for that video. And with that, I'm going to close this out so that I can get back to some of the other videos I got going, which is the upgrade video from H2 to H3 is the next one that I'll be pulling out here. So keep an eye out for this. This was just a slight pit stop along the way because it's a little easier to produce than that video was. So I figured I'd throw this one out in the meantime for everybody to chew their teeth on. So until the next time, from Fred, Eddie the Eagle, and me, Peter B, have fun gaming.